started, get the housekeeping stuff done. So we're so glad you all are here. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming to the P.E.R.C presentation, How to Raise an Emotionally Healthy Boy in an Additional Area. Last month we had our speaker, Lisa Hinkleman from Rocks, and where we talked about the girls, so now it's the boys' turn. We appreciate the PTOs and their efforts and supports of P.E.R.C, and they're an extension, they're our extension from of the PTOs, and that's where we get our funding sources, and we're so appreciative of them. You are welcome to join our meetings anytime that you want. We meet the third Wednesday of the month at Central Office. That's at Emerald Campus at 9:30. We have community leaders from Nationwide Children's Hospital, Centero, Dublin City Schools, ACT, and of course our PTO reps. And special thanks to Mathemasia for their ongoing support. We want to thank Abbey Theater today for this wonderful space. And also, please don't forget to fill out your survey at the end. Go to Dublin P.E.R.C and click on survey. It's the way we find out about what you want to hear, what kind of programming we need to work on for the following year as well, too. And then, also, the next thing that's coming up is mark your calendars. Be Well is back, February 29th. And there is also a speaker coming, Jessica Leahy. She has written the Gift of Failure. So it's a great book. It'll be a great day. Mark your calendars. It just came out that we're having Be Well. So without further ado, because I know this is a busy morning for everybody, and we have Libby Steele here. And she's a licensed psychotherapist who graduated with a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling from the University of Dayton. She works closely with individuals and their families to provide a supportive and engaging environment for real-life lasting change. She is especially skilled in listening and working with parents, families, and enjoying teaching families to connect in a deeper level. Matt Dunatchik is also here and is a licensed psychotherapist who graduated also in clinical mental health and counseling from the University of Dayton. He works with teenagers and adults as well as parenting. He enjoyed leading workshops in the community and that is supportive and supports the growth and understanding. He believes we all have the capability to change and to express our fullness of life. We're so happy to have you all here today, and we're going to talk about boys, and we feel that this is such an important topic for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Cool. I think we have a PowerPoint.
We do have a PowerPoint.
And as it's coming up, we love, I don't know if we were here in January talking about resiliency and grit in our kids, and we are a very dynamic and interactive pair of presenters. And so we want to involve all of you as much as possible because you're here to get something out of this, and if we're talking about something that you don't care about, you're not going to get anything out of this. So we want to engage with you as much as possible. We're not going to put you on the spot, but we might put you on the spot.
Wait you out.
Yeah. And so really how we always love to start is why you're here. You obviously taking time out of your morning to come here. We have a topic to talk about, but we are very curious about the why. What brings you here today of all the other things we've been doing right now? So who wants to jump in and start?
I'll do it.
Yes, look at you, right off. Yeah.
I'm here today because we have a 6-year-old, and I feel like he really struggles with dealing with being upset and frustrated. I don't know how to help him, like, channel his emotions, just stay calm and know when he's frustrated. And I feel like then it can escalate quickly on everybody's end to be like, what do you do?
Yes.
So help with helping him understand it's okay to be frustrated and what he can do to cope with that.
Yes. So for those who didn't hear, she has a 6-year-old son who is struggling with frustration, emotional regulation, self-soothing, things like that. And as a mom, it's like, what the heck do I do with this? I have no idea.
And not listening.
And not listening. Oh, let's sprinkle that in. Because all 6-year-old boys should be dang good listeners, right?
Especially when they're not already calm.
Right? Thank you for sharing. Anybody else want to share why they're here? Have you seen a hand, Kathy?
Well, I have some real issues with some of the apps that kids are using these days.
Yes.
Just specifically Snapchat.
Yeah.
And I want to know advice, or if you think that people, or if you think it seems to be a way that a lot of kids are communicating these days, and I think they can get themselves into a lot of trouble. So I have questions about that very specifically.
Who else is worried about Snapchat specifically? Apps in general. Gary.
Social media in general.
Okay, thank you for sharing. And we're going to get to that more towards the end of our presentation. And part of the interaction, the interactive, idea behind this is we want questions like, as we're talking, throw your hands up, and I see you there. Like, stop us, let's ask questions. If we're confused about something, we don't want to barrel through. So,
You might have to wave your hand a little.
yeah. 'Cause it's,
Yeah.
okay, right.
We're kind of in the middle. We have 2 boys that go 7. Similar with, we want them to have emotional stability, right? We want them to handle their emotions well. But also with stuff like Minecraft and all these other games that they're really involved in, we're pretty young and technological, but they're like, it's crazy the stuff they get into and the things that we should be worried about. So
Yeah.
that's what we want to be equipped for.
Great. And so we're going to talk about what we call setting loving limits. And this is really in general for parenting, but we're going to get a little more specifically into setting loving limits with technology.
There's one.
Yes.
I'm here because I teach in the afternoon in Dublin schools, and I teach 6th graders, and it's interesting how the parents are the driving force with the kids and how much technology they're using. And when we survey the class and I ask, like, who's on social media, who can download any apps they want, who has restrictions on their phones, it's interesting that you can tell some kids are just more addicted to technology and that their parents are the ones that they control how much technology they're having. So that's why I think we do have a lot of power in this. And so I want to know how we can help be the best parents we can be by limiting their technology and being in charge of it.
And helping them to be in charge of it for themselves.
Hi, I have 2 boys and a daughter, and my daughter shares all of her thoughts and all of her emotions, and really more than I even hear sometimes. But my 2 boys don't really talk like that, so I'm just curious about, sometimes I feel like there are things they should want to talk to me about, and I do review texts and things like that, so sometimes I know there are things that I wish they were talking to me about, so just curious about how to draw boys out.
How old are they?
I have almost 15-year-old and almost 12-year-old.
Almost 15 and almost
We have
12.
a teen and a tween. How many have daughters and sons and kind of deal with the same thing where my daughter, she's open, she's emotive, she's almost a little too much, and my son, there's like nothing.
Hiding in their room.
Yes, hiding in the room, shutting down, getting angry, behavior problems. Yeah. All right, one more and then we'll keep moving. Thank you all. This is great.
So, similar, I like to learn how to communicate with boys, how to get information out of them, and how to get my idea.
Yes, how to interrogate our boy. We will touch on that in a more empathetic way, but yes, there are ways to help our boys open up.
What is going on in their heads?
Because yes, we want to shake them and interrogate them and all that. Yes. All right. So these are some of our goals. So we set goals to kind of guide the workshop, but based upon some of the things you said. So I'm not going to read through them all, but I want to start by kind of laying a groundwork of how we view boys as professionals and how we view boys in society, how we view boys in this country, and some of the themes that I think boys have to face, and that we as parents either were aware of or we're not. So I want to challenge you today as parents to kind of think about your own stereotypes of boys and things like that. So we're going to talk a little bit about boy culture, traditional masculinity, to kind of lay the groundwork. We're going to help our boys understand and express their emotions, and ways as parents that we can do this, and that will not involve lecturing, it won't involve fixing, it won't involve making them talk. It's going to hopefully be a mind shift for you around what kind of parenting works best with boys. We're going to model for them, which is a big thing. So if you are a closed person, if you're not super emotional, your boys won't be, because they watch you. So part of what we want to explore today as parents is how we, as parents, model for our children emotional openness and vulnerability. So we're going to talk about anger, sadness, fear, and how that plays out with boys. And then navigating their digital world. This is going to be sprinkled in throughout the whole thing. because we got a lot of feedback about talking about that in general. So we're going to do that, and then setting loving limits, we're going to touch on that. Okay. So, there is a ton of research out there, and my favorite is from the American Psychological Association around traditional masculinity is how they define it. And so this is the idea of, anti-femininity, achievement, repressing emotions, that most emotions are feminine and bad. And these are things that we as a culture, I think we're shifting from, which makes me excited, but I think it's kind of ingrained in our culture. And a lot of times we say things to our kids, or I hear things that parents say when I work with sons, like, boys don't cry, man up, don't be a sissy, you throw like a girl. Anything that could be construed to a little boy as feminine becomes bad. And research shows around age 7, 8, 9, little boys start to shift. Little boys start to shift from being lovey and emotional and open to shutting down. Their emotional diversity shrinks because they are learning that anger is really the only emotion that they can express. And boys, little boys, will express their emotions behaviorally. They will not talk, and they'll act out. And so a lot of boys these days are being misdiagnosed with ADHD because they don't have the diversity and support to emotionally regulate everything that they're feeling. And this isn't something that I think we as parents do overtly. And again, I think it's shifting as the generations grow, but I still think it's a part, and research shows it's still a part of our culture and how we treat boys.
And one of the things we're going to touch on too is what is developmentally and kind of typical and appropriate. All teenagers, all teenage boys have periods of time where they kind of withdraw into their rooms, and we get a lot of questions from parents. They just want to be in their room all the time. So we're going to talk about how do we navigate that as parents and honoring what's really very typical teenage behavior, and setting a limit and a container around also you do have to engage with your family and the people that you live with.
And some of the things, and I put toxic masculinity up here. It's a buzzword these days, but I think it's proven today because in the research that's put out there, men are 4 times more likely to commit suicide and complete. Men commit 90% of homicides in this country. Men obviously have the more stigma around their anger outbursts. And what the societal research, anthropological research shows is that because we teach our boys to repress all of their emotions, it has to come out some way. And for boys who grow up into men who do not know how to regulate themselves or understand and appreciate all of their emotions, it usually will turn to violence, domestic abuse, inappropriate relationships, mistreatment of women, things like this. And this is what I mean by toxic masculinity. And we believe it's in essence an epidemic, and we are here and happy you are to help our boys from a young age, and I don't care how old your sons are, you can incorporate some of this, but help them understand all of their range of emotions, their true self, and not be ashamed of it.
And I think the other direction it can often go to is, it can go to aggression and, sort of angry outbursts. It can also go towards isolation and withdrawal and loneliness. We see a lot of lonely boys. We see a lot of lonely grown men because there isn't really a model, there isn't really a place for them to have these emotionally intimate interactions, and so they kind of are isolated from that perspective.
So we want to hear a little bit from you. Like I said, I want to set the ground. I don't want to, this isn't to inflict terror or fear as parents. And that's not that's not why we're here, but we want to understand how the world societally works and how we can support our boys at home and support them when they're out into the world and they have to deal with some of this stuff. So anybody have thoughts on this? Fears, feelings, ideas? Want to push back on this at all? We can have a little conversation about it. I've seen way in the back. And if you want to yell,
we'll repeat
unless Kathy's going to sprint up the stairs.
So in our group, a tween boy, teen boy, and then an oldest daughter.
Yeah.
And we struggle with kind of the mixed messages.
Especially like movies and TV.
Yes.
Men are either stupid, the woman rules the house and puts them down all the time, or they're these big action heroes, super macho, stereotypes.
Yes.
So we struggle with that middle ground of how do you be a respectable gentleman, how do you honor, both men and women, things like that. When, women are bombarded with all sorts of messages too, but, the men are either stupid or they're super testosterone. So how do we navigate that kind of middle ground?
Absolutely. Yeah, I can take that, absolutely. For the most part, your voice will always be stronger than what they get in the media. It might not be as loud, there might be a lot of interference coming in from culture, and movies and commercials and Snapchat, but your voice is always going to be louder and stronger. More is taught than taught. So they're going to watch the way you talk about the men in your life. They're going to watch the way you interact with your partner. I am married to someone who I jokingly refer to as a lumberjack. He is just kind of like a super manly dude. He's also an awesome partner and husband that changes more diapers than I ever did, does the dishes, does the laundry, helps out. And I don't make a big deal about it, like, oh, that's so great, he does all those things. I make a big deal about what a team we are. I make a big deal about the fact that we are partners, that we both pitch in, that we both show up every day in, kid-appropriate ways. But I'm thankful, but not surprised when he's a good teammate. Does that make sense? But they're going to pay so much more attention to that stuff, and they're going to pay more attention to the way that you interact when you're disappointed with your spouse or partner or the other, members of the opposite sex in your life. They're going to pay attention to how you navigate that.
Part of what I want to touch on here too is the difference between boys and girls in their developmental brains. And I know we probably have some teachers here who can attest that boys do not learn the same way girls do. Boys are spatial learners. They have to learn through physical activity. They're all over the place. Where girls can sit and they can read and they can talk more openly at a younger age because their brains develop more advanced in kindergarten, first grade. A lot of our boys are getting misdiagnosed at that age because they're rowdy, because they don't learn by sitting and learning. They learn by being physical. And part of that in the family is if you have an oldest daughter and younger kids, younger sons, it's understanding that my sons are going to develop differently than my daughters based on their brain biology. And so respecting that and not trying to, make them do things at an age, a developmental age as they can't, so that they don't feel the shame of that is important too. But woven throughout today, and I hope, you get this as we talk more, the family is where our boys learn to be in the world, and then they go out into the world and experience it, and they always come back home, and that's where they can have what we call a soft place of land. So if home feels secure, connected, stable, I have no shame at home, then when I go out into the world and I see these messages from the media or from my peers, I can come home and there can be openness at home to talk about what it's like for me. And that's kind of the next phase of this presentation we're going to get into, around how we can really deepen and create an emotional connection so that this is always present. Because we know that boys have to face a lot in this world, we know that girls have to face a lot in this world, and we know that we get a lot of messages. So if we have a space at home where I as a boy feel safe to talk about it, I'm going to be able to talk about it. Any other comments, questions before we move forward about yes?
I guess kind of to the role of boys, and you said it's kind of important to see the spouse being, a lot of times spouses travel a lot and they're not around during the week. And they don't have that helping out, that chipping in role model to really see this as kind of a normal activity. Oh, Lord, thank you.
Thank you.
How do you implement that more and weave that in? Say this is what to feel a part of it, maybe on the weekend, I don't know, to make it more of a routine that they see.
So we're saying if we have a spouse who works a lot, who's not in the home, and then, modeling that partnership, is that what you're asking?
Yeah. I mean, it's healthy when they're around, but when they're not around, how do you mirror that more?
Absolutely, and I think, again, it has to do with how do you respond to it. Obviously this didn't happen overnight. You didn't wake up one morning and discover that they're constantly gone, right? So it's the way you talk about it when they're gone. It's the way you honor what they're doing as well. Where's Daddy? When's Daddy coming home? Why is Daddy gone all the time? Daddy is an incredibly hard worker, and I am really proud of how much he's doing to take care of our family. You know how you see me running you to soccer practice? You know how you see me getting out the door at the same time as you do every day for my work? Daddy's doing his work this way, and I'm so proud of him. And it's honoring that is also a way of contributing, and not, I mean, save it for a different audience when you're frustrated about, the 9th night in a row of running it solo, right? Save that for a different audience, and be very careful that the way that you talk about the spouse who's traveling when they're not there is with respect and integrity and support. You don't have to hide that it's hard, but you have to say, I really appreciate what Daddy does. And I know it's hard for Daddy too, to be gone. And for your husband, if he's traveling all the time, or your wife, if they're traveling all the time, for them to also own to the kids. Sometimes it's really hard for me too, because that is the other piece of the modeling that's so important. If Dad can call, and Dad can say, or when Dad can come home and say, no, I really wish I'd been into soccer practice. I know it's just practice, but it's important to me to be there, and maybe I can FaceTime in and watch a little bit of it sometime, and for them to own that there's an emotional piece to them too.
And one thing to add to that, being careful with your language around saying to your boys and your girls, all your kids, like what specific roles need to be. Like dads always work and moms stay home, or dads do this and moms. Just be careful of that language, because what it does is it subtly tells our children, our boys, that this is the only, role that a man can fulfill. If that's the messaging I get. So how Libby explained it was, your dad is working hard and I appreciate it. He's a hard worker. I work in this way, Dad works in this way, and together we are a team in this family. Is very different than dads have to work hard so that moms can stay home and take care of you. Is a different message for our kids. It's just a subtle shift in language, and it's that parental awareness of how am I speaking to my children about what's going on. All right. We kind of talked about this, and I just want to say, like, the biological considerations. I want to make sure. What that just really means is kind of what I touched on around schooling. I think when we get our boys in the kindergarten, first, second grade, issues start coming up because a lot of our boys are not developed to the level that our education wants them to be, and sometimes there can be some friction. And so it's how we handle that with our boys without shame, how we help them understand the struggles that they're having, and we're gonna really connect into that in the next section. Yeah.
If the teacher doesn't understand that piece, right? How do you negotiate that?
If you have a teacher that doesn't understand that piece, how do you negotiate that? Right. I'm curious if there's any teachers in here. There might not be because it's a Wednesday morning. And I'm not going to throw you, but we could have a whole workshop on this around parents, teachers, and how we can collaborate as a community. So obviously if there's some frustration that my teacher doesn't understand my child, our first and foremost suggestion is to, with open, warm honesty, talk to the teacher.
Curiosity.
And be curious about the teacher. What's their experience of my child? Do they happen to have a lot of boys in their class this year that are all struggling in this kind of way and they're frustrated? Do they need support? Can we support the teacher in a different way so that we can connect with them to best support our son? That's my first piece, I think my first suggestion. I don't know if you have others. We have a lot of parents we work with and teachers who, and it feels like, the teacher's not doing a good job, my son's being forgotten, they don't understand, and that can happen. It's part of, helping our children be raised by the village. They go to school, they get support from the teachers, and we as parents need to collaborate with warmth and support to really help the teacher and yourself understand where you're both coming from. Because at the end of the day, if we know we all have goodwill for this child, then we're going to be on the same page.
And another piece of that is, depending on the age of the kid, but when you're talking to your child about their experience in the classroom and you're picking up on why you and this teacher are not jiving, to be very careful not to put the teacher under the bus. And it just kind of goes without saying, but I'll say it anyways. The more you can be, just like Matt said, open and warm and curious, with lots of respect to the teacher, the better it's going to go for everybody. And it can be really tempting when your mama bear, your papa bear heart gets involved and you're like, oh no, But I would say rather than, running something, for instance, straight up the flagpole and wanting to talk to the principal or da-da-da-da, to start with the teacher and sit down and say, I think I need a better understanding of your expectations for my child in your classroom because I don't think they're getting it and I'm not sure I am, and begin there. And ask them to explain their process and start to be curious, and then ask if they're open to hearing some things that you know about the way your child operates best. And my guess is that most teachers would be like this, please. Because if your kid is struggling, then they are too.
Okay, so the first thing we really want to talk about, and this we believe is like the basis, the foundational basis for parenting. If this is not here, parenting will, children will struggle, and will struggle as parents. We call it the emotional connection. And so, what are they learning from you? So we believe that children learn to be in the world in 3 ways, and Libby's going to kind of explain what that is, and we're going to start diving into the emotional connection.
Sure. So it's 3 ways that children learn to be in the world are, how do you interact with them? Do you get down on their level? Do you look them in the eye? Are you curious about what's going on with them? Do you speak to them with respect even when you're angry? How do you treat whoever you are co-parenting with? Your spouse, their grandma, the teachers, the village at large. How do you treat your co-parent? Do you treat them with respect? Do you make comments under your breath? Do you pick fights about things in front of the kids and never resolve it? How are you interacting with that person? And the last one is, how are you interacting with the world at large? With the neighbor, with the server in the restaurant, with the person next to you on an airplane? How do they see you treating others? By a show of hands, how many people live with a little mirror at home? I certainly do. It's really cute when we recognize, my smile or somebody else's manners. And it's not so cute when we hear certain phrases come out of your mouth and you're going, oh, that's mine. That's not great. Right? They are watching. More is caught than taught. If they see you treating others with respect, even when you're angry, even when you're frustrated, if they see you being open and curious and including of others, they will do the same because you are their model for how they are going out and meeting the world. And the most important part of this is how you are interacting with them. That is what builds the emotional connection, and you cannot have a relationship with your child without an emotional connection. If they cannot feel that you two are in some sort of emotional interaction, if there is not an authenticity there, you're not going to be able to connect with them, you're not going to be able to correct them without that emotional connection. There's no relationship without that. So when your kid really, really, really wants to tell you something and you're kind of half listening because you're doing other things, that is not emotionally connected. Does not mean that you always have to drop what you're doing, get down on your knees at their level and hear a story about a Lego, right? That's not always possible. But it means that you can pause, for example, what you're doing, look them in the eye and say, this sounds really important. I'm going to finish this and come find you so that you can have my full attention. Or, is this an emergency? Do I need to stop? And giving them that opportunity to start to filter through their own process and response. Do I really need something right now? Or do I just want to ask for another cheesesteak? Whatever the thing is. Having an authentic engagement at their level that allows for respect of your process and theirs.
An authentic engagement, in essence, means as parents that I like to tell parents, remove your head. You remove our own anxieties, fears, worries, what we're doing, and we are literally present with our child. And so for a lot of children, and so to maybe reinforce this, for a lot of children, younger children, the best time you're going to be most connected to them is bedtime, when they're in bed. And that's what we call when our children's windows are open. For older kids, teens, it's going to be in the car. I'm seeing some head shakes. Is this making sense what we're talking about? So we interact with our kids all day. There are more powerful interactions than others, and the emotional connection is what we're talking about. When they feel like we are giving them 100% of our undivided attention. So we aren't on our phones while we're talking to them. We aren't watching a TV show while we're talking to them. We aren't doing something else. We're sitting with them. We're on their level. We're connecting with our eyes, our body language. We're listening with curiosity so that they feel that connection to you so that they can be 100% themselves without feeling bad about it.
And in those moments, like in the evening when you're tucking them into bed or when they're in the car, when you get these little snippets that you just kind of know, that's something more. What we want is for you to be able to let them have their feelings. And we'll keep talking about this a little bit later, but it's very easy to go into fix-it mode. It's very easy to go into lecture mode. It's very easy to go, well, what did you do? You know, all of these things that kind of go through our heads. But what we really want is to hear what they're trying to communicate to us and help them name the emotions that they're having. Wow, you're really frustrated. Wow, you're really mad. Wow, that seems really confusing to me too. I wonder what was happening there. Just helping them to name it because it normalizes it. It helps them understand that this kind of like swirling energy I have going on is some kind of feeling rather than just anger, for instance.
So here's an example with thinking about a younger boy, maybe 6, 7. Something happens, you don't know what happens, and he comes up to you and he's crying, and he's upset, and he's just, really struggling. A lot of times when we work with parents who have sons, and daughters too, a lot of times as parents, the first thing we want to ask is, why are you crying? Now, it might come out as warmth, like, why are you crying? But a lot of times children misinterpret the question, why, as a shameful thing. Like, I should not be crying. And so when our sons are showing us emotion, and a lot of times it will be with crying, a lot of times it will be with anger outbursts. The first thing in the emotional connection that we want to do as parents is not ask why. We want to name what's happening. So a son comes up to us and he's crying, and we get down his level and we name for him, you are really sad. You are crying. Something has happened. And he might keep crying, and he might ask you to hold him. He might do whatever he does. And your job as a parent is to hang out with him in that space, is to not ask him why, is not say things like, be a big boy. Big boys don't cry. We do not say that. We don't say, we don't try and cheerlead him out of it. Like, you're okay. You're going to be fine. Because that doesn't help. One, he doesn't feel emotionally connected to you, and two, it does not help him understand what's going on inside of him and how he can get through it. And as a little boy, what I need to get through it is my mother or father to be with me in it, support it, so I can get it all out without shame. And then we can, depending on the age of our boys, talk a little bit more about it.
I was just going to say, too, especially when they're little and you are the authority on all things in their life, when they get hurt, when they cry, when they fall, and we say, you're okay, it creates this really confusing moment for them because they don't feel okay. But here's dad or here's mom saying, no, you're okay. And they're kind of like, I don't feel okay. And it's a really confusing thing. When they fall and they get hurt, as you're picking them up, that was scary. That was scary. It looks like your leg is fine. Where else does it hurt? And helping them to kind of walk through and not just kind of shutting it down with you're okay, right? Helping them, and that was scary. And when they're a little older, I don't know about how many of you guys have kiddos that do this, but mine don't necessarily lean in when they're crying, especially my son. I get a lot of, go away. I don't really go away. I kind of back off a little, but I hang in there and I say things like, I'll wait right here until you're ready. If you change your mind, I'm right here. And I just kind of like, not hover, but I kind of stay in the vicinity because I want them to see that I can hang in there and I want to be there once they've calmed down enough to say something.
There's a lot of goals to the emotional connection. One that we're talking about now is helping our boys understand how to regulate themselves with our support as parents. So this is what whenever we meet with parents one-on-one, I would say 99.9% of the time we as parents want to fix. We don't like seeing our children suffer, and so we want to fix it. And so we try to. We tell them it's okay, we give them solutions, we tell them what they should do. And while there's an appropriate time for that, in the moments where I am emotional and struggling, I don't want any of that. I want you to listen to me. I want you to feel I want to feel as much empathy from you as possible. And for boys, feeling empathy from parents, we'll get to it, but especially dads, is going to help me as a boy understand that empathy is good, that it's appropriate, and the more empathy I have for others, and the more empathy I have for myself, the more I have for others. And this comes from the emotional connection. we don't teach it by saying, this is what empathy is. It's not how we learn. We learn empathy because we feel our parents are empathetic to our struggles. And so, like Libby said, if we have a boy or a kid who's like, I don't want you to talk to me, or a teenager who like is combative and shuts down, naming it for them. You're upset, you don't want to talk right now, fine. But we're gonna come back to this later. And coming back to it later when he is open to reconnect with what happened. The first hand was in the back. Right there, yeah. No, you're next.
Yes. My kid is 11. Question is,
Your kid's 11 or little?
11.
11, okay.
So I'm trying to teach him to be polite, kind to others, not to use abusive words, which he is accepting it. But the point where I'm not able to, I'm stuck, is when he comes up with saying, hey, he's using abusive, he's not kind, he's not being polite. And like that takes himself into a shame because he's not coming back and also not able to accept it. And I'm stuck what to advise at that point.
So let me rephrase and make sure I understand. So your son is learning these kindness and politeness when he sees other people being unkind to him. He's struggling. Okay. This is something, I thank you for bringing this up, because this is something that I wanted to talk about anyway. Our boys go out into the world, and I love what you're saying. I love whatever you're doing to help them understand kindness and politeness is working, because he goes out into the world and he's interacting with other boys, and they're jerks. Boys can be jerks to each other. Boys are jerks to each other. There's some healthy jerkiness, but sometimes it's over a boundary. And what your boy is learning at 11 is where his boundary is with other boys. So he's going to go out into the world. He's going to feel hurt. He might feel some shame. But then he comes home to his dad, and he says, Dad, like, I'm struggling, or Dad, this sucks, or I hate this guy, I feel like maybe he's right, maybe I am this. And you, because you have the emotional connection with him, can help support him through it. Not giving him, well, you should do this or this, but with curiosity, like, what is this like for you? This is really hard to have a friend who's a jerk to you. How do you think you should handle it? What's it like for you? Seeing if he can come up with some of the answers first before you give him some ideas. But what it sounds like you already have with him is the emotional connection where he goes out into the world and it's hard, and then he comes home and it's safe to say whatever it is he's feeling. Because when I'm an 11, 12, 13, when I'm a teenage boy, it's hard culturally it's hard to formulate these deep, intimate friendships with other males. And so a lot of times this happens. We razz each other, we jab each other, we give each other our time. And a lot of boys are sensitive and can't handle that. Their sensitivity is a really good thing, but other boys don't appreciate that. So coming home and having you is...
this is even worse when it is girl.
It's even worse than what?
If it's a girl.
Oh, if it's a girl.
Yeah, there's a whole other level there.
You see me assuming it's just his guy friends.
Let me say something to that
Yeah.
effect too. It's really, really hard when your kid comes home and talks about someone not treating them well. Because one, we're their parent, and that just is really hard to hear. And we just don't want to believe it. We want to fix it immediately. And we've already been there. We've already been in elementary school and junior high and high school and had someone be kind of nasty to us, and we think, oh no, you don't have to go through this. I've already done it. You can learn from my mistakes. And they cannot. Right? We want to fix it. The most important thing, like Matt said, is that emotional connection and you being the soft place to land. But there's another really important kind of learning that can happen here, especially for someone at around age 11, is that sometimes there's not a fix. Sometimes people aren't nice. Sometimes people are over my boundary. I can still be kind to someone who's not really behaving respectfully to me, but I don't necessarily have to be weak. And that is a really hard thing for little boys and little girls to learn. And that looks like believing that my sensitivity is good. That looks like understanding, I don't know why I didn't like that interaction, but I didn't like it. I'm going to go home and talk to my dad about it, and then dad's going to support. That would feel weird. Yeah, I don't think I'd like when someone said that to me either. Can I help you with this in some way? What would you like to do about it? Because most of the time, what we want to do is, well, did you say this? Well, don't let them do this. We'll tell the teacher this, right? And all we're doing is we're taking away their struggle. We want the struggle, and what they might ultimately end up sitting with is, I'm going to be respectful to that person, but I'm not going to engage with them unless I have to. I'm going to navigate around them. I'm not going to sit with them at lunch. I'm not going to play football if they're playing football because it doesn't feel good. I'm not going to swing next to this person because I don't like their competitiveness. Whatever that boundary is, I'm going to hold it, and I'm going to believe that it's mine to hold because I was supported at home in my gut reaction to that individual.
And part of, just one piece to add to this is, it is okay to say to our kids if they're getting mistreated out in the world. It is never okay for someone to call you that. It is never okay for someone to make fun of how short you are or how tall you are. It's never okay. That is absolutely appropriate as a parent to say in conjunction with this.
Really, like, teach them that way to run away from the problem they're facing instead of like teaching them how to stand for themselves when they face this kind of people instead of I don't sit with them, I don't be with them, and I just run away from that.
So let me speak to that, because she's asking, does that teach them to run away? I want to be really clear that what I'm talking about is just normal, kind of crappy interactions between kids. This kid's having a bad day that clashes with my kid's bad day. I'm not talking about bullying. That's a next level thing. There's a lot of gray lines there in terms of what's bullying, but I'm speaking from this perspective. Bullying is one kid or a group of kids consistently targeting a specific other individual where there is a power dynamic in there, where one person has power over the other, and it's constant and it's targeted and it's a specific situation. This I'm talking about is just kind of crappy interactions, and it's not running away from it, in my opinion, by choosing not to engage with it. There are many, many times in our adult world that we just go, yeah, okay, and we don't engage with the person, you know? Someone's kind of being rude to me in the checkout line. I don't really feel the need to stand up for myself in that moment. I'm just going to be like, okay, I'll just not engage with that. I don't need that, right? If I am having some sort of unpleasant interaction with someone that is in some way affecting my life at large, I'm going to stand up for myself. I'm going to address it. I'm going to be correct. But I don't think that we need to like pick every little battle as adults, and I don't think kids do either. I think that setting a boundary and just going, oh no, thank you, I don't want to play with you. Why not? Well, because gee, that's not fun. And walking away, that is a boundary. That is stand up for themselves. They'll say it in their own little kid way with all the grace and tact that they have, but that's still a boundary, right? Do you want to, run a race with me? No. No, last time you tripped me. Pass. Right? Or whatever it is. That's still a boundary. And I don't view that as running away from it. If there's something going on between kids and you feel like the kid needs some help being assertive, that's a different conversation, in my opinion. And I saw that somewhere.
My 9-year-old son, his go-to is anger, like from 0 to 100 in most all situations, with me, with his friends. I don't know what to do with it. He's very sensitive.
What do you do? What have you tried? What is it like for you? Give us some insight to your own process when your son
I've
is.
tried so many things. Oh my gosh.
What is it like for you? Is what I mean. How do you feel? How do you experience it? What happens for you when he's outbursting?
He's usually really mean, and it sucks. I'm gonna cry.
You're not the only one. You hear that?
It's constant.
It's constant.
Yeah.
So he's cutting. He knows right where it is.
Yes.
So one thing I want to say, and I'm glad you shared, you're not alone in this. And another thing is, our children will mistreat us like this because we are the safest person in their life. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not saying you should continue accepting it, but I'm saying it because you are safe in his world. He knows you'll never go away. So he can express whatever he's feeling in this way, which isn't appropriate, by being cut. Now, my next question is, does he ever come around, even if it's like this big, with some remorse? Later in the night, when he's calm, Does he come back and hug you and say, I'm sorry? What, does he come back around?
Occasionally.
Occasionally.
Occasionally. It's like, not the negative self-talk, and that's self too.
So all of this is for you. We can talk more specifically if you want at the end, but some of the general things that we're going to talk about are going to help
We're
you.
going to touch on this for sure.
Because something's going on in your boy that he doesn't feel comfortable expressing anything but anger. The negative self-talk for a 9-year-old means he has anxiety, and there's a lot of fear in there that we need to understand what it is. So as a mom, when he comes back around and his window's open and he's not feisty, that's the emotional connection time to engage with him. Earlier tonight, you were very mean to me, and I didn't like it. I love you forever and always, but I did not like that behavior, and I'm really wondering what happened today. Or I'm really like, do you remember what it was like to feel that anger? Give him some space. He will probably have no idea. In the moment when he's angry, you can set with firm, warm assertiveness, I will not be treated this way. I'm going to remove myself. Now he might follow you, he might do this or that, but you let him know it's not you go away. You say to him, I'm going away because I will not handle, or I will not stand for this kind of, disrespect. And then you go away, and hopefully he doesn't follow, but he might. The goal is for you to separate from him so he can soothe himself and then come back around later and say, what happened earlier was not okay. But I want to understand if you understand what you're feeling. Now, he's 9, so maybe not. But you're modeling for him 2 things. 1, my boundary, this isn't okay. And 2, I'm still interested in what you're feeling. Because your anger is big, and I don't want to deal with that. Your anger is big, and I don't like how you're expressing it, but your anger is very important to me. And I want to know what you're so angry about.
And I want to add to that too, it's so hard staying calm as much as possible and not joining their chaos, because it really just becomes one of these things. And this might sound very impossible to some people, but I would also suggest not consequencing his anger, even if it goes to very mean and disrespectful, because then you're just creating another power struggle around his inability to manage his emotions there. And I would just, like Matt said, I would remove myself. The phrase that I like to use a lot, kind of similar to what he said, is I don't let people speak to me that way. So I'm making it about me, more so than I'm making it about him. Not you're being disrespectful, you're being rude, you're being mean. I don't let people speak to me that way. So I'm going to go over here, and you can come find me whenever you're calm, whenever you can be kind. You can be mad, but not mean. So if that takes you 2 seconds and you want to try again, wonderful. Takes you 2 hours, I'll be here. But I don't let people speak to me that way. And not going in and consequencing and saying, you've lost screens, you can't do this, you can't do that because of this angry outburst. That will never make as big of an impression as you're going, this is not the way to get anything with me. I'm going to back off. The consequence is I'm removing myself from the presence right now. That makes sense.
Before we move on, I just want you to share with us, because I don't want, sometimes when our boys are like this, everything is clouded in our interaction with them in his anger. So can you share with us 1 or 2 things that you love about your son? Because I don't want it to be clouded, because what happens as a parent, we're always a little on edge, like, is he gonna have an outburst? And that's not who this boy is. I'm guessing this boy has a lot of other qualities. So I want to hear 1 or 2. Can you share 1 or 2?
He's very curious.
Very curious.
And I like to be sensitive. He cares.
He's sensitive, he cares, and he's curious. Thank you.
All right. Some of you said Libby actually kind of gave me an aha moment. I have 2 boys, and I want them to grow up emotionally mature. I didn't have a dad growing up, so being angry and violent is definitely shown for sure. But when you said label that emotion, I was like, wow. I literally remember a time being anxious. I didn't want to be anxious. I didn't know that my mom would have identified it. That probably would have been super helpful.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really helpful, and I think other parents should hear about boys. I think that would be key.
Yeah, thank you for that feedback. So that aha moment is just the naming of the emotion, because that also helps to normalize it. Anxiety is a terrible feeling, and depending on its strength, feel like you're dying. You think there must surely be something wrong with me, especially in this digital era when we see all of this stuff on, as my friends call it, the blastograms, right? Where it seems like everybody is just thriving. And then we're going, well, what's wrong with me? I can't do that. Or what's wrong with me? Going to this party feels terrible. What's wrong with me being first? All of these things. And helping to normalize and name, that's anxiety. That's a feeling. That's anxiety. It's so helpful.
And a lot of, I think all kids, but with boys who have anxiety, it can be anger or it can be like physical ailments, tummy aches, headaches, I don't want to go to school, I don't feel well. And these are moments to name and see if there's an emotion. And you can just say, you're worried about going to school, aren't you? Or you're a little sad that this happened. And that's awesome feedback because in my experience of being raised by my parents, nothing was named either. And so I've learned in my adulthood, it's a struggle to really understand what the heck am I feeling right now so that I can deal with it myself. So I thank you for bringing that up because that's, if you take nothing else away, naming it for your kids can be it.
And if you have a kid that isn't likely to be able to hear that, that's going to get offensive, you go straight to the no, I'm not. Taking it a little further back and saying, I wonder if you're feeling a little worried about that. Or sometimes people feel really nervous about these kinds of things, even broader, and then just stopping and letting them sit with that. They might still be like, but it doesn't mean they didn't hear it.
Well, I want to make sure we have time. So
Yeah.
we want to touch on, and you brought up, like you grew up without a father. This isn't for, this is for, mom and dads are involved in parenting. And if there is one parent that is missing, and you have some questions about this, like if I'm a single parent, or grandpa's helping, or this or that, the idea is male versus female caregiver role model. This is what our sons need. So we just use mom and dad for ease.
Right.
One quick question.
Yeah.
I need to comments. My son also argues with the mother. So is son arguing with mother normal? Should we? Do we have to engage? The father has to engage.
Is the son aligning with the mother normal? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, arguing.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, you back. You go. So, but it is not part of father that want to be bridging it all the time. They should be engaging themselves. I'm midway. I'm not sure if I have to do it or not.
I think the first question is to ask your wife if she needs your support. To step in and say to your son, how you're treating your mom is not okay.
Always yes.
I'm sorry.
It's always yes.
It's always yes. Well, there's your answer. So if your spouse is saying I need something and you can give it.
So that might be a little bit of a wider conversation and we can connect afterwards, but I would say too, if they're in this power struggle, the moment to get to him is probably not in that moment. You might jump in that moment and say, you're not going to speak to your mother that way, you're not going to speak to anybody that way. I heard your mom tell you to go do this, so now you will go do this. But then it's later to have a conversation with him one-on-one and say, listen, we have a problem with the way you're treating your mom, and so let's work together to come up with some solutions and put some of the responsibility on him to figure out how that's going to be navigated differently, and then support them both to do that. So a lot of this we've kind of already touched on here and there, but this piece about not prematurely separating connection. So many of us have this image, maybe from our own experiences or maybe from, popular culture of the mom and the daughter have a nice chat, tea, glass of wine or something like that. So there's this idea that moms and daughters are always going to be friends. And I think that, maybe with the exception of a few rough teenage years, right? But that's a whole other topic. There's this kind of perception that as they get older, that there's a disconnection between mom and son. They're not having as many little chats. And that's true for lots of reasons. Boys and girls operate differently. They really do. It is very rare as your sons get older that you are going to have an eye contact across from each other, intimate conversation like this. They really do better side to side. So finding a way to maintain that connection, to keep the channel of communication open as they get older, just with the understanding that it looks different. It looks different. I might have way more conversations with you while we're kicking a soccer ball. I might have way more conversations with you while we're drawing side by side or in the car. How many of you with older kids have kids that put their earphones in the car? Stop that. Stop that right now. This is a huge thing, and it's a huge avenue, as we're going to get into, about operating with integrity around digital things, but we are allowing them to withdraw. And I'm not saying all the time. There are times when we're like, okay, you know what, put those headphones in, right? But generally, day to day, we are losing abilities to connect with our kids when they get in the car and disappear into their phones, just like we are losing the ability to connect with our kids when we disappear into our phones, into our screens. Keeping that emotional connection open, not kind of starting to separate when they bring things to you, being present with them, but understanding that being present with your boys, especially as they get older, probably looks different. It's usually a side-by-side, it's usually while you're doing something else, and it might be an ongoing conversation. It might be little pin drops, as I call it. You know, in the morning before school, they might say something, and then it might not come up again for another day. That's still them bringing things to you, following their pace, understanding where they're coming from. And another huge thing that comes up, and this is again a whole other talk, but when we have young boys start to bring us questions that we're kind of like, nah, ask your dad, right? Things like this, don't do that. Just like you don't want your daughters getting that message from their dad. You can come to either of us about anything. So if your son comes to you with a question that kind of feels like maybe not your area, hang in there. Say, wow, that is a really good question. Here's what I think. I don't know a whole lot about that, but let's ask your dad. Or let's ask Uncle Joe, or whoever the man in their life is that can help with that. But don't shut it down and go, oh, that's guy stuff, I don't know. Hang in there and make sure they know that you are always a safe place to have this connection and ask these questions.
And I think on this, and I want to make sure we have enough time.
Yeah.
This a big piece of modeling for our boys, your interaction with your with dad or the male role model in your life. Especially in a divorce, we see so many divorced couples where the moms and dads will undermine the other parent. And all it does is teach our boys that, you know, we're less than. And so as a mother, we want to support the male role models in our boys' lives with respect. And kind of like we talked about earlier, it's not, this isn't dad's role, this is dad, I'm supporting dad and what he's doing for this family, I'm supporting dad and what he's doing for himself. And that, our boys hear these messages more from moms, and that's part of the like critical, judgmental voice. Like they are very high attuned to that from moms. So being aware of that too.
And from the critical voice perspective, being aware of the way you are phrasing things with your voice. That, don't you think you should? Well, what if you just, do you really want to? If you really want to correct them out of something, if you have a strong opinion, it would be way better to just be clear and say, I don't think that's a good idea, let's talk about it. Because it's that subtle, kind of critical, negative voice that creeps in there, and it either feels like pressure to be different, it feels like nagging, and it's taking them out of their struggle. So either say the thing and have a conversation about it, or let it go.
Okay, so I'm appreciative that there are some dads here. So sometimes we do these things, and because traditionally dads are working, they're not here. So I appreciate you dads in the audience, and you moms, share this with your husbands. The most important thing I believe as a man and a father is to challenge our own beliefs of what it means to be a man and a father. To explore our own childhood upbringing, our own messages, our own definition of how we want our voice to be in the world. And when I talk to fathers about this, the underbelly of it all is always, I want my son to be respectful, I want my son to be happy, I want my son to, you know, engage in the world in a way that makes him feel good. And that's what we want as parents. So I think the first thing as parents is as fathers is to challenge our beliefs on what a boy should be. And really, if you need to go deep in it, go deep in it. The other thing that we see happens, it's usually when boys hit 9, 10, 11, physical touch with dads goes away. I don't really understand why. Usually, sometimes the boys pull away, but what happens is the fathers stop, hugs, kisses, snuggles, high fives, any sort of physical touch goes away. And it is a detriment to our sons because they need to understand physical touch with dad as well. And this I'm not talking about physical play, I'm talking about physical intimate touch. And so this could be around bedtime, dad get into bed and hang out, read a book, son is snuggling with me, we're hugging after school. And he might come to a point in his teenagers and says, I don't like this anymore, and we talk about it. But it is important that we don't stop once our boys hit a certain age. Modeling, which we're going to get to next. This is hopefully a given, no shame and emotional expression. So this is the, you be a big boy, boys don't cry, don't be a sissy. I mean, grow up. These things still happen. We still see parents who treat their sons like this, which is sad to me because we know the messages they're getting, and we know as men, getting these messages as kids or in the world today does not feel good because we are taught that being emotional, being sad, being scared are not good things, and we want our sons to learn directly from dad that they are. Or any male role model, uncles, I don't care if you are a male and you have an impact on children, these are the things you want to do. And then time spent with your boy. This is, in essence, one-on-one time. It's not sports related. It's doing something altruistic. It's something where we, as father and son, are giving back to the community. We're volunteering. We're doing something where my son can learn that the world is bigger than himself, and that we, as men, can give back in different ways than just working and playing sports. Any questions, thoughts on this? So modeling is kind of what we've been talking about, the 3 ways our kids learn to be in the world. So we believe modeling is extremely important and intertwining the digital world. So my question to you parents, and I'm super guilty of this, is how aware are we of how much we use our own phones when we're with our kids? Who thinks they're really keenly aware and conscientious and conscious about their use of their phone? We got a hand over here. We got a couple hands. Good. Good. And what I want you to do is be honest with yourself, because your children, especially the little ones, are watching you on your phone. So when they're teenagers and they want their own phone, they understand if you're using your phone in front of them in disrespectful ways, they will too. Modeling is also with technology is having the emotional connection to talk about responsibility online. Now this is with depending on what age we decide to let our kids have a phone and social media, it's not only checking in on them, but sitting down with them and talking about what it's like to be a good citizen on the internet, what it feels like, what it would feel like if they were mistreated. And like I said, if that emotional connection and empathy in our boys is there, they are less likely to anonymously bully other people online.
And that piece too, with the modeling and the open conversations, is they are much less likely also to put themselves out there online in a way that would really make us cringe as parents, right? It's helping them to understand, that the internet is forever. It's really, really, really forever, and that nothing is as private as they think it is, and helping them to understand that what they put out there, grandma might see it, right? Or whatever, however you want to phrase it, right? And helping them understand that with very open and honest conversations that are ongoing. It's not, congratulations, you're the age we've decided, here's your phone, here are the rules. I might look at it from time to time. This is an ongoing conversation.
Yeah.
Regarding modeling, what if couples have different behavior? How do we teach?
What if a couple has a different behavior?
It's already modeling.
Like for example, my husband really likes his phone.
I think it starts with you and your husband being on the same page, and this is the conversation that the two of you have. Maybe you can come tonight. That this is the conversation that the two of you have about what is our family value around technology and screen use, and what are we putting out there, and being curious with him. You can't parent your husband, so sitting down and being like, you need to stop this, probably not going to work. But saying, here are my concerns. Here's what I'm aware of. Here's what I'm learning. Here's what I'm seeing. We have to think about this, right? And starting to see if there's a way that you can the middle or find some sort of common denominator around that. Because the other thing too that comes in here is that there's a lot we do on our phones that are not planned, right? And there's a transparency issue that's gone from when we were little. You know, when I was younger, I knew what my parents were doing. I knew if they were using a phone book, they were finding a phone number. I knew if they were on the phone, I could hear their end what they were doing. A cookbook, a map, calling the bank, getting out their checkbook. I could tell what they were doing. Almost all of that is navigated through my iPhone now. So there's no transparency. The kids don't know the difference between looking up a recipe and scrolling social media. And so sometimes part of that modeling is as simple as narrating what you're doing, especially if you have young children, and including them in that process so that they can watch you navigate that with some integrity. It sounds silly to narrate what you're doing, but kids don't care. It doesn't feel silly to them. So if I have to get out my phone in front of my kids at a time that we're really kind of all engaging, I might say, you know what, I don't remember how long to bake this chicken for. This is what I do, come see. And I look with them, and they watch me type it in, because it brings them into that mix, and it shows them how I'm using my phone for things other than Snapchat.
So I think the biggest thing, and I think the scariest thing as parents, is when we let our kids experience the internet and social media and things like that. It's scary because we don't know what they're actually doing. And so it's looking at it two ways. One, without social media, they're still interacting in the social world, and we're not a part of it. And I want it to be treated as the same in this digital world, where if my child is struggling with something, that they can come and talk to me about it, even if it's happening in a group chat or on Snapchat or whatever. And that is created by the emotional connection, but it's also created in the safety I feel as a kid to come and talk to. And ongoing conversations throughout their entire childhood about what technology can do, what it cannot do, and how to respect, like Libby said, you know, it's forever, it's permanent. And having these conversations. And there are a lot of resources out there, and we can talk more about that around like books and ideas about how to have a conversation with your spouse as parents. How are we going to treat technology in this family, and how are we going to convey that to our kids? It should be a conversation around boundaries and technology. Okay.
So, something that I hear from a lot of parents is, how do I help my kids with the bad feelings? And that's an interesting way to look at it. I don't believe there are bad feelings. I believe that there are feelings that feel bad to experience. But what I'm always trying to work with kids is that there are no bad feelings. Feelings are just energy. They pass. We actually spend more time thinking about how we felt about something than we actually do feeling it. And so it becomes this kind of loop that we get stuck in. This is just a really simple little way that I used to look at this with both kids and parents. More or less, there are 4 primary emotions. There's joy, anger, fear, and sadness. From these emotions, there are various things, right? There's disappointment, there's frustration, there's rage, there's hunger, there's all of these things, anxiety, loneliness. What I want for every kid that I work with is as if these were faucets, equal access to these feelings. I don't want them to feel things equally, that would be flat. We don't want flat. But I want equal access. I want their joy faucet and their fear faucet to work just as well as their anger faucet. Because here's what happens. If for whatever reason the child does not have a lot of access to their fear faucet, particularly little boys, if they are getting the message that it is not cool to be afraid of something, if they are getting the message that if they're afraid of something, they've got to kind of like buck up and fake it, that it's not okay to say, that makes me really nervous, that makes me really uncomfortable, I didn't understand why you said that. All of these things, these are ways that their faucet becomes blocked. All of that water has to go somewhere, and in little boys, it will often come out the anger faucet. If there's no channel, feelings are just energy, it doesn't go away. It either gets turned inward and becomes depression, or it goes flying out one of the other faucets, for instance, anger or fear. And that's why when we were talking earlier about the little boy that everything comes out as anger, his anger faucet is wide open. but I wonder how often he feels sad and can't name it. I wonder how often he feels afraid and can't name it. And that's not bad you or bad you or bad you if your kids are struggling with that. It's just a highlighter that there's something else going on there and it's all pouring out one faucet. And so it's sitting down with them and saying, after the fact, when they've had one of those angry outbursts that goes straight to me, and I've got a kiddo that does that, I get it. Sitting down with them and saying, you know, earlier, I asked you one question about where your dance shoes were, and you really just got really mad really fast, and that was really confusing for me. What happened there? And then helping kind of like gentle, curious questions, what we would call the elevator, dialing it down and saying things like, I wonder if maybe you were worried I was going to be mad at you because you're missing again. Is that maybe possible that that was part of that? And you might get a little shrug or a little, and that's not an opportunity for a lecture, that just jams that faucet back up. That's an opportunity to open it more and say, you know, there's really nothing we can't solve together. It's no big deal that you were worried about that. Just tell me. It's no big deal. And helping to keep those faucets open. It's just the way they are wired often, but little boys often, if the fear or the sadness faucet is stuck, it gets poured out through anger. Little girls often, it gets poured out through sadness. And some little kids, it gets poured out through joy. Nothing's ever wrong. Everything's always fine. I like everything. I like everybody. How was your day? It was so great. Everything's fine. Everything's great. And you're like, well, I just watched you fall down a flight of stairs and get made fun of. But I don't understand. That's fine. Everything's good. It's fine. Everything's really great. Right? We know kids like this too. We want equal access to the faucets. And part of that goes back to the modeling thing. How are we modeling that in our home? What does it look like when I'm in? Is it scary? Do I scream and stomp and slam doors and call names and start doling out punishments? Or do I say what's happening and what I mean? When I'm sad or embarrassed, do I withdraw and close myself in my room and pretend that everything is fine? Or do I say, wow, today was really hard. I think I need a hug and a knock-knock joke. Who can help me? How am I modeling my interaction with these faucets?
And the more I, as a boy, can understand and regulate these different processes, the less likely I am going to go anonymously online and be a bully, or the less likely I am going to get aggressively angry on my video games if people are telling me, because I have more access to other feelings.
Or disappear into various other distractions that exist out there on the internet.
So, for sake of time, we talked a lot about this when we were in January, but for sake of time, I'm going to go through this really quick. So, we do a lot of workshops on just this topic. So if you have questions, talk to us. We also have books just out there. But self-esteem development, the biggest thing that we want you to take away from self-esteem is helping our boys understand what it is about them that's unique and special. So, if I have a sensitive son, and sensitive meaning I'm emotional, I'm empathetic, I'm kind, I'm warm, which isn't a traditional way of being a boy, and I don't feel like it's a good part about me, I'm going to have low self-esteem about it. So as a parent, we want to build these parts up in our sons. We want to honor them. We want to help them see when they're being warm and kind out in the world. We want to name it for them. When we see them do something kind, we say to them in that moment what it is that we see they're doing and name the kindness. So he can connect to that as part of who he is as a person. And self-esteem is very different than self-confidence. So as parents, I think we focus heavily on self-confidence. They're different. The difference is self-confidence is my belief in my ability to do something. So we praise our children for good behavior, we praise them for sport, we praise them for grades, and that I'm learning as a boy that I'm good at these things, I have confidence. It does not teach me about who I am as a person. It doesn't teach me about the qualities about me that I love and appreciate. So when I fail a test or don't make a touchdown or do this, if I have no self-esteem, I'm a mess. I crumble. Because I can't tell myself, like, I made a mistake and it sucks and I'm angry at myself and I'm hurt, but I'm still okay. And so as parents, I want to focus more on esteem than confidence. So that's where praising if we overpraise our kids, they're not going to learn. If we overpraise our boys, they're not going to learn the qualities about them that make them unique, that are going to hold them up when the world throws them curveballs or they make mistakes. Any thoughts, questions about this? Yeah.
Sorry.
No, please. Keep asking.
It's kind of a blend of what you guys were talking about before, but like we have a kiddo who's real emotionally, like he knows his emotions. It's incredible. And trying to get him to like draw back from being really upset, I mean, he can just really like it, especially if he doesn't get attention. I don't want to damage his, self-esteem from being like, all right, bud, wrap it up, or.
Yeah. We can think that though, that's also very difficult.
So how do we navigate that, respectfully and not staying so?
I have a thought, and then you,
Yeah.
okay? So, my first thought is, when you get to that point where you feel like he's milking it or whatever, this is a moment where he needs to learn to self-soothe without you. So a lot of times I'll talk to parents about creating a space for their sons to go away to and take care of themselves and setting a timer. So one thing you do is say, you're in the kitchen and you say, we're going to go in the living room and you're going to sit here on the couch. I'm going to set a timer for 5 minutes and you do whatever you need to do if you're upset, and I'm going to go and I'll be back in 5 minutes. Now, it's doing two things. One, it's helping him learn to self-soothe and self-regulate, and two, it's saying to him that you aren't the only person who can help him through this. He has the power too. If you don't come back, we got an issue. You have to come back. And you have to check in, sit next to him on the couch, sit side by side and say, how are you feeling? And you might notice he's feeling better. And what that's teaching him, especially in the 5, 6, 7-year-old range, is I can more quickly regulate myself. So that you're not getting to the point where you're frustrated as dad and be like, come on, bud, all right, that's enough. Because, come on, bud, that's enough. But he has to learn. So setting up a space where he can self-soothe, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, and you just check back in. If he still needs more time, okay, I'll be back in 2 more minutes. And if he likes timers, if he's that age, do try that. Now, if you're somewhere you can't do that, you got to kind of formulate an area where he can take care of himself without you there, and then you come back and own the emotion he's feeling, name it for him, and see if he needs anything.
And I would say, just as a follow-up to that, that if you really feel like it's one of those where I'm kind of just doing this out of habit, or I'm kind of bored, so I'm going to roll it out and keep you in my orbit, to help them channel it into action. Okay, you are really upset, I see that. What would you like to do about it? What is your plan to handle this? I have some ideas if you're ready to hear them, but maybe you have some as well. And you can be really silly about it, you can be really serious about it, you can do other things that start to say things like, well, should we do a handstand? Would that help? Maybe we should run around the house. What would you like to do to take care of yourself around this? And start to channel it into action. They'll take you up on that if they still need something. If this is just kind of like going on out of like habit or whatever, they will probably start to back off from it because they don't really need to do anything. They might be like, I guess I'll just go play. That sort of thing.
Yeah.
I know you're trying to move on.
No, we're okay.
I have an 8.5-year-old, and I guess when you were explaining the difference between self-esteem and self-confidence, so my son fixates somewhat on the performance of other kids. So-and-so is the first done with this assignment. So-and-so is the fastest. I'm not going to get a touchdown. And it's kind of, he's been like that for a long time, so I'm just trying to understand exactly how to move forward with that.
So what she's saying is really typical of young boys that age. We, as boys, compare ourselves to the others because part of growing up is comparing, and part of being a boy is being the best. And so that's really typical that he's doing that. As a parent, my curiosity is how do you engage that when he brings it up? Do you try and cheerlead him out of it? Like, no, you're really good at this, and you're really good at that. How do you handle that?
His dad and I have a similar approach, and I think it's starting to work, but just talking through it, well, just because you're the fastest at reading doesn't mean that you understand what you read. So we try to not put him down for how he feels, but then sometimes I do get upset, not upset, but just it's not a big deal. You know, everyone has different strengths, and I kind of have a more generic response where my husband gets more specific.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great reaction. In a situation like this, we always say curiosity. So, you know, when you're second or third attorney in your test, what is that like for you? Well, I don't like it. You don't like it? What do you mean? Well, I have to be first. Well, what's it feel like to be first? It feels great. I love being first.
So I need to dig deeper.
You just need to give him you need to help him process what he's feeling inside a little bit more outwardly. And you're already kind of doing that by saying, you're naming, you know, if you finished, you might not have understood it. So that's naming kind of the reality, but he needs to understand the emotional, why is it so important to him? He's not going to be able to answer that question, but he will with more curiosity from mom and dad about what it's like for him not to be first. And why first is important, but not by asking him, what's it like for you? What happens when you do this? Do you feel when you're taking your test, do you feel worried that you're not going to be first?
Yeah, because it is affecting his school a little bit, because he's trying to rush through things because he wants to be the first one done.
Yes.
You know. Okay.
And then like be silly about it. What would happen if you were the last one? Or like what would happen?
If I just jump into the fix-it mode, I'm the total next time mode, and I'm trying to not.
Why? How could you feel like this, child? Because your world is perfect. I don't understand why you're
Thank you.
Let him struggle through it with you and your curiosity.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to keep moving on and talk a little bit about the container, and I'm setting some limits, especially around video games. So do you want to flip it, and I'll just talk about it from the perspective of the container?
Next one.
Yeah, you can keep going. Okay, so when we talk about setting up, for instance, the family values, what I want is for kids to start to really understand truly the why around what we're expecting of them. I don't need my kids or your kids to have 19 rules about just the living room, right? I don't need them to have 27 rules about playing outside. I need them to understand what is expected from them with respect to our family value system. So this is an example. Think about it like a square, like a container that the kid is operating within. 4 values. So respectful, accountable. I always joke, I really don't know why I put punctual on there. It is not our family value at this point in time. Honest, right? These are the boundaries I'm expecting my child to operate from. And when they do something that runs up against one of those walls in the container, now there's a consequence, right? It might be from me, or it might just be from the world. That idea of the container, the idea of these rules is so that they understand that we don't jump on the couch, for instance, because it's not respectful. We also don't get up in the middle of a conversation with someone and just walk away, because that's also not respectful. I don't need 2 different rules about that. I need to have them understand what does respectful mean, so that as they get older and go out into the world away from me, which by the way is the goal, right? That the container moves with them. So that when they are 5, 6, 7, 8, and they're playing at a friend's house, they understand the way I expect them to treat other adults and other children in that home. The same way when they are older and they have the internet in their hand, they understand the way I expect them to treat other people. And that is that limit. And that this is the beauty of the container. It does allow them to struggle. It does allow them to feel some natural consequences and maybe some connected consequences from me. And the container moves with them. It gets bigger as they get older. Your teenager is probably allowed to get in their car and drive off somewhere. The container grows. And if they violate your trust, if you say, be home at 11, and they come strolling in at 11:30 or text you at 2 minutes to 11 and say, can I stay longer? You've met the walls of the container. That's not respectful, accountable, or punctual. So your container has shrunk back down for a little while. And what that looks like is very simple. Well, now you're home at 10. And we'll see how that goes for a little while. And if I can trust you to operate with integrity and with the container, then maybe we'll put it back. Just like if I tell you that you need to be stronger than the screen, for instance, and you may have an hour of video games after school. And I walk in the door and I say, hey, I'm pretty sure you've been home for 45 minutes, so just warning, and you don't turn that screen off yourself at an hour and walk away pretty calmly, you are not stronger than the screen and you can't handle it yet. You will catch all the wrath, but that's okay. It's okay. Because the super news around this is you're actually in charge. It can feel that way sometimes. When they are telling you everybody else is allowed to do this or everybody else has Snapchat and your gut is that your child at their developmental level and with the way they're operating in the world is not ready for that privilege or you can't trust them to use it appropriately, you are the boss. So you can talk with them and say, you know what? We're not doing that yet. We're actually not doing social media yet. And this is what it's going to look like for us to get there. These are the things that I need to see. I need to believe that you are stronger than the screen. I need to believe that you can be accountable and honest. So although you maybe don't understand this, when I ask you to unload the dishwasher and sweep the kitchen floor after school and I come home and you're still laying on the couch, that actually is a direct tie-in to whether or not you're allowed to have social media. Because if I can't expect that you will follow through on your commitments and what's expected of you in something as simple as a broom and a floor, I cannot expect that you're not going to be on Snapchat sending things that our family does not agree with. And it ties in. And so you don't just say that because I said so, or because I have to be able to trust you, or because I need you to be careful, or I need you to be safe. You need to help them understand what does that mean. Well, it's because I asked you to unload the dishwasher and you didn't even do that. So we're not there yet. We'll get there. I want you to have that. I understand it's important. But we are not there. We are not there yet. And this is how I'll know we're there.
And this is, I think, way more important. I think a lot of parents think that, like, oh, on your 13th birthday and your 14th birthday, don't give an age. Give a level in the container of what you expect from them before they can get the privilege of social media.
That gets you out of a lot of tricky conversations too. Well, my big brother did. Or well, my little sister already has. Well, let's talk about that. I
It's
see
not an
that.
age, it's an expectation.
Right,
It's how we
exactly.
interact.
Exactly. And I see a hand.
Just a quick comment. It's okay to be a new mom. Sometimes your kid appreciates it. They have to let you know they appreciate it. But I rock it on the M&M in my kids' group. But it's also a safe place to come hang out in our house. And I want my son had it before my daughter did. She didn't necessarily get it at the same age. It was when, she's a very confident child, but when I felt she was ready to see, because the worst part about Snapchat is not what the mean things necessarily people are doing out there. And she had older siblings of her friends tell her this. The worst part is the party that you didn't get to go to, or 4 friends went to the movies and the car only holds 4 people, including mom, so you're the 1 person who didn't go. So it's okay. It's okay to be the mom.
Right.
And these are part of the conversations we are going to keep having with our kids around social media or video games. And one final thing, and I know we lost a little track of time, we got to end. I want to end with, especially with boys and girls do it too, but mostly boys and video games. So as a parent, as hard as it might be, if your son gets a new video game, you better plop your butt down next to him and watch him play it. And if your parenting gut is saying, nope, this is too violent, I don't like this, you say, I'm sorry, I thought this game was different, and we're not playing it. It's not you can have this game and then he gets it. If you are watching it and you do not like where it lands, you can say no. You need to be connected to it. Don't read about it online. Don't act, like you can ask your parenting peers, but sit with him and watch him play it. Tell him to put his headphones on. Sit behind him. Watch him interact with his peers on Discord, on his video games, and listen. And talk to him about it. Because there's a huge culture, video game culture, that is horribly disrespectful. And it's part of this traditional masculinity where boys are jerks to each other, and you can watch him interact on his video games. And that can be part of the container. You do not get this game until I get to watch you play it for however long I determine necessary. And I think that for video games that you use your own discretion, but we believe violence, if younger children are exposed to violent video games, then they have more violent thoughts. I'm not opposed to video games whatsoever. I think they're really empowering for people, but as parents, we need to be involved in what they're actually doing.
can remember that they're on the internet when they're on those video games, talking to people and helping them to understand that they're not only talking to just one person. There's a whole world out there and they have to operate within the container even there.
So we'll be here, we'll be here a few minutes. I don't know if we're comfortable having a question or two. I lost track of time. It's 11 on the nose, so if you gotta go, you gotta go. I get it.
We can take, well,
How about two questions?
Two questions
And then we'll be here hanging out.
And this hand right here has been up and then this.
It's not a question, actually. I was just gonna see if you could see the loving limits slide.
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
oh, the other, oh, sorry.
This one?
Yes, thank you.
So on the game, so what do you do when your son wants to go to the neighbor's house and the neighbor, you don't have control over it then, as far as?
Yes. So what?
Because I gave my son Roblox because he was begging for it, and I put on all the parental controls, and the parental controls still aren't working at our house. And I gave him Roblox because he was going over to his friend's house to play it, and I wanted to be able to monitor what was going on.
Right.
So, and I can't delete Roblox now. Like, it won't let me just delete the game.
What do you mean it won't let you?
It won't. It even says in the instructions, like, you can't get rid of it, you can change the password or.
So I have two thoughts about that.
I didn't know that.
One, it's totally appropriate for you to ask other parents about their screen time policy. I'm that mom, most of my friends are that mom. Tell me about how you handle screen time, tell me about if you have firearms. Those are okay questions to ask. They can be awkward and you can name how awkward that is and you just ask and then you set the expectation again with your kid. I realize that there are different rules for different families and even when you are at your friend's house, I expect you to follow our rules and be stronger than the screen and stronger than the peer pressure and say, you know what, I can't do that. You know what, I'm not allowed to play that game. And helping them understand that that's hard to do and helping them to find a way, maybe role play a way to get out of it when they don't. Maybe you have the guts and the strength to say, I'm not allowed to play that game, right? Giving them the excuse if they need it. Actually, I think I have to go home. Or my mom says I'm not allowed to play that game. She's so mean, whatever it is, right? Helping them to understand you get it and the container is still the container. I'm trusting you to follow my expectations. And you begin there, and then if you find out that they've gone against it, then you address it from that perspective. Okay.
I have a 14-year-old son, and he's a big gamer, and he does play soccer and basketball, thank God, but he's into this game called CSGO. I don't know if anybody here is familiar with that game, but he gets like crazy when he plays it, and like if I'm taking it away from him or telling him to get off, it's like cutting off his arm, and I struggle with him, like I'm literally wrestling with him on the floor on the ground. You know, I take away the keyboard, I take away the mouse, I take away the cord,
He needs a
I
break.
things all over, so I'll take it away from him for like, it's like detox, for like a week at a time, or for the weekend, or for like more, but it's just out of control, all the time. Yesterday I was struggling with him to get his phone back, his cell phone, and he has tablets. He always has a backup, and he keeps hiding things. I hit a controller once that it took me a year to find it because I get so frustrated. And I said, I have to find another one. Grandma buys Call of Duty, and I said no, so we return it. You don't have to buy it online. You don't have to spend $100 with his account, to buy Xbox Live, and then Steam products, and it's just gambling. It's just out of control.
I think that he is not being stronger than the screen right now, and so more so than just that game, it sounds like he's really struggling to operate with integrity there, even just going behind your back and trying to do things that you've asked him not to do. So I think it's probably a wider conversation, but to me, when you have a kid that you literally have to wrestle it out of their arms, it's time for more break than a weekend. And I've been there. I've tried to kindle a lot of summer plans recently, but it's time for a break, and it's not you're in trouble, you've lost this privilege because you're not being, kind about it. This is really an area where you're struggling, and it's okay, I can help. We're just going to take a break. Well, for how long? I haven't decided yet. We'll see, and just shut it down. That's my thought, because that's a kid that's really struggling to be stronger than the screen, and the screen is winning.
all saying, I know you're angry with me, I know, I know you're livid, and Rachel, I know you hate me, I know that. But as your mother, this is what we're gonna do, because I'm watching you, and I don't like how I'm seeing you interact with this game. And name all the things that he's doing, but not in a shameful way, I'm your parent, and this is something I don't like, and you've fallen down a hole, and I'm gonna help you by doing this. But yeah, it's very different than when we were growing up, so I appreciate that question.
You want to be sorry, it's not a problem. What do you need to bring up the risk?
Yeah.
It does.
We had one more question to.
Yeah.
And then, sure.
I was just wondering, we were talking, why don't we sound like you guys? Like, are there online resources? What can we do to kind of like,
well, we live in
were all like, we should
are,
have videoed this so we could
I think they did
replay
it.
how it sounds like to talk kindly to like
okay,
your
so
husband
this is
or your child.
we're in a container here in this, so the way we parent, like we do our best, but we screw up too.
Yes.
Okay?
For sure.
Because we're human beings. Yeah, thank you, but no.
I can tell you some epic stories.
Yeah, she's got some good stories. So we are here, like we have our cards, like we're here. Well, we live in this world, we're professionals. Our love and what we do is helping support families and parents, because without that, the world's gonna be a worse place, and we believe everything starts in the family. So we have passion. We offer psychotherapy, family therapy, couples therapy, marriage therapy, adolescents, Libby sees families. I mean, whatever you need, we'll talk.
Yeah, we're so happy that you came.
I'm sorry.
It was a great conversation. There's some books out at front also, as well as you're up here for a few minutes. I know Matt has to take off in a few minutes.
I've
but
got a few minutes.
Yeah, so please come up if you have some
We'll be back tonight
questions.
if you want to.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can raise the same.